Okay, now that you've watched the filibuster video, let's say that we've got a bill that actually makes it through all of that. The House has voted yes, the Senate has voted yes. And remember, it only requires a simple majority. One more yes than no in the House and one more yes than no in the Senate. But the problem is, through this long, complicated process, sometimes amendments are made to the bill. And the version that the House passes might not be the exact same version that the Senate passes. And that's a problem. If you're going to have a law, you need to have one agreed upon version of the law. So when this happens and the House and the Senate have different versions, that's where a conference committee comes in, or you might hear it called a joint conference committee, as it was on your quiz. Joint meaning simply that you've got members of both the House and the Senate on this specially formed committee, and their role is to, without adding any new material, simply iron out the differences. They're going to come up with the compromise version that can be sent back to the House and the Senate, where it can be passed in the same form, word for word, comma for comma, period for period. And then and only then, once it has happened that the House and the Senate have both passed the exact same version of the bill with a majority vote, then and only then can it finally be sent on to the president. And that is the last thing we'll talk about in just a moment. Once the president gets a bill on his desk, he has essentially 4 options. Let's go through them one by one really quickly. And the first one is the simplest. The president can, once he gets the bill passed by the House, passed by the Senate, he can sign it and it goes into law. We're done. The other option is he can reject it, and most of you know that we call that a veto. So he can veto the bill, he refuses to sign it, he returns it to Congress with a list of his objections. Now, usually that'll be the end of things, but the Constitution does allow a way in which his veto can be overridden, as in Congress can make it a law even if he doesn't agree to sign it. And the way that happens is you would need a 2/3 vote in both houses of Congress, both the House and the Senate. Remember, to get it to the president's desk the first time, you needed only a simple majority. You needed one more yes than no. But if you want to override a presidential veto, the threshold is much higher. You need 2/3. So assuming everyone is voting in the Senate, you need 67 out of the 100 senators. And assuming everyone is voting in the House, you need, I think it's something like 290 of the 435 representatives. Here's the bottom line, though. Overrides are actually extremely rare because the reality is a bill that's controversial enough to veto, the chances that it will have 2/3 of both houses supporting an override is extremely small. And also, often they won't bother to pass things. They know the president is going to veto anyway, unless they're trying to just force him into a difficult position. So vetoes are extremely rare. In 8 years as president, thousands of bills crossed the desk of President Obama. He was overridden a grand total of exactly 1 time. I think George W. Bush before him in 8 years was overridden a total of 4 times out of thousands of bills that crossed his desk. So overrides are extremely rare, but they can happen. It's essentially a fail-safe in the Constitution that makes it so that one person on his own cannot stop something from becoming a law if it's overwhelmingly popular otherwise. So those are your 2 simplest options. He can sign it, he can veto it. But what if he does nothing? What happens then? Well, the answer is, after it sits on his desk for 10 days, if he has neither signed it nor vetoed it, after 10 days, and Sundays don't count, Saturdays do, but Sundays don't. After 10 days, it becomes a law on its own without his signature. It automatically passes into law if he does nothing, takes no action on the bill for 10 days. Unless we get to secret option number 4, the pocket veto. And this is the one that is the most complicated to understand. So I'm going to take a minute here. What you need here is to remember back to the very beginnings of this unit in Chapter 10, when we talked about how sometimes, during some portions of the year, Congress is actively in session. During other portions of the year, they have adjourned, almost like certain times of the year, school is in session, but then you could say we adjourn for summer break. Now, here's the thing. A law can only go into effect if Congress is in session. So, if the bill reaches the president's desk, normally after 10 days it becomes a law on its own. But if Congress adjourns, officially ends their session, before that 10 days has elapsed, the bill is dead. It doesn't pass into law unless Congress is still in session. And maybe the advantage there, if you're a president who wanted to veto the bill, is that they don't even get the chance to override it. Not that that was likely to happen anyway, but the bill simply dies, and it would have to start from the very beginning of the process when the next session of Congress picks up. So there are your four options. The president can sign the bill into law. He can veto it, officially reject it. Of course, there's the option for the override, which is extremely rare. He can do nothing, which normally causes the bill to become a law on its own after 10 days, or he can pocket veto the bill if there are fewer than 10 days remaining in the session of Congress. So I hope that helped you guys. You can certainly get in touch with me if you have questions. And there's a couple of other things you're going to do in class today. So I'll see you guys soon.